If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to MINDSHOCK. This is your host, Bruce Big Wire, and today we are delving into the highly mysterious Las Vegas incident of 2017. And this is a very bizarre incident, a mass shooting that was covered initially and then apparently swept under the rug and no longer talked about, while much more minor school shootings where a troubled mental kid happens to get a gun, all of a sudden there's the most thorough investigation in history. Whereas in this shooting in public, one of the worst shootings ever, if it occurred as alleged, and it's all swept under the rug. So that leads some to believe that there is funny business going on. Was it a lone gunman acting alone? And does that story add up? Or is this something far more sinister? Were the reported helicopters above the source of the gunfire? Do the rounds claim to have been spent in the amount of time they were spent? Does that narrative match the photographs taken in the hotel room? Is it possible, according to the laws of physics, for one man to spend that much ammunition from so many rifles in a small period of time? Does the timeline add up? Why has this seemingly not been investigated properly and then ceased to have been talked about? People are still talking about Columbine, but the Las Vegas incident seems to be largely forgotten in the mainstream media. Is that highly suspicious? Some people think so, and have requested for MINDSHOCK to do a deep dive into this bizarre shooting. As always, if you enjoyed the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. If you like the podcast, hit the like button. Share it across social media platforms, of which you can find us on Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, Patreon, and patrons do get priority for case or topic requests, as well as co-podcasters. All right, so let's just go over the established mainstream narrative. How often is the mainstream narrative true? The coincidence theorists would have you believe. All the time. And there is no reason to question. You must put your blind faith belief into the mainstream media and corrupt profiteers who would never lie under any circumstances, or could ever be mistaken under any circumstances. Anyone questioning anything is just a conspiracy theorist, aka critical thinker, not indoctrinated into the cult of authority worship. Obviously, dogma and faith in the establishment is the highest virtue that can be achieved by a coincidence theorist. So, just straight from the Wikipedia, it states, on the night of October 1st, 2017, Stephen Paddock opened fire upon the crowd attending the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival on the Las Vegas Strip in Nevada. Between 10:05 and 10:15 p.m., he fired more than 1,000 rounds of ammunition from his 32nd floor suites in the Mandalay Bay Hotel, killing 58 people and wounding 413, with the ensuing panic bringing the injury total to 869. About an hour later, Paddock, a 64-year-old man from Mesquite, Nevada, was found dead in his room from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. His motive remains officially undetermined. The incident is the deadliest mass shooting committed by an individual in the history of the United States. It focused attention on gun laws in the U.S., particularly with regard to bump stocks, which Paddock used to fire shots in rapid succession at a rate of fire similar to automatic weapons. As a result, bump stocks were banned by the U.S. Justice Department in December 2018, with the regulation in effect as of March 2019. And conspiracy theorists, aka critical thinkers, who do not believe that everything is simply mere coincidence or anomaly, they point to a series of events, some of which may have been staged, or all of which, depending on what what theories you are reading. And you know what's really bizarre too is the censorship to censor theories. I mean, maybe we're all in a hologram and this isn't even real. That theory is not censored. I mean, that's highly controversial because that means that all these lives lost and the suffering of the world is not real. And yet, that can be freely talked about on any social media platform for infinite hours. But anyone alleging that a certain event was staged, that's a big no no. It's really weird how the corrupt profiteers want to brainwash and control all masses and censor these theories. It's just really bizarre. I mean, how is it more disrespectful to say something didn't happen than it is to make fun of something that did happen? And yet you find all these jokes and comedians. I mean, some of them are really, really, I would say, distasteful humor. Not my personal cup of tea. But they can freely joke about it as long as they admit that it happened. That's all okay, perfectly moral, and is not denounced by anybody. Or at least not as much, not as famously denounced. But there's all this call for YouTube to take down any videos alleging false flags or staged events or events that didn't even happen and nobody died. That's a big no-no. But making fun of those things, that there's no attention to that. Like that can be done. Just really, really bizarre. When you look at the agenda of the corrupt profiteers in the mainstream establishments, it's incredibly obvious to everyone other than the coincidence theorists who cling desperately to their mainstream dogma due to their indoctrination into the cult of authority worship. But if you look at the timeline in some of these shootings and which guns were in question, those guns happen to be the ones used at later shootings, which were used for justifications for banning weapons. You see this in the Columbine case in particular. That one has been requested as well. That's an incredibly deep dive because there is so much behind the scenes shadiness of that event, the aftermath, and the people involved. And the degrees of separation in that case with certain individuals just really bizarre. And then, of course, the town of Columbine itself with its bizarre links to satanic occult elements and things of that nature, all swept under the rug, all dismissed as mere coincidence and anomaly by the coincidence theorists. All right, so let's continue here. The location, of course, the Las Vegas Strip. It's a stretch of the Las Vegas Boulevard immediately south of the city of Las Vegas in Clark County, Nevada. The Strip is known for its concentration of casinos and resort hotels, including the 43-story Mandalay Bay southwest of its intersection with Mandalay Bay Road in the unincorporated town of Paradise. Las Vegas Village, a 15-acre lot used for outdoor performances, is located diagonally across the intersection to the northeast. From 2014 onward, the venue hosted the annual Route 91 Harvest Country Festival. The 2017 festival ran from September 29th to October 1st, with over 22,000 attendees on the final day. So this is the final day of that festival. It's also interesting that Wikipedia and all these other news articles, they definitively state, this is the perpetrator, this is this. Then if it turns out it wasn't, you go through and you see all this false history touted as true. And that's the nature of propaganda. You see this with many, many events over the past 100 years even. Things are reported as XYZ when they're actually ABC. And then after the fact, it's all swept under the rug and they basically pretend they didn't get it wrong. And the coincidence theorists just lap up all the new propaganda, completely ignoring that the corrupt profiteers are wrong. I mean, I don't know, just throwing out numbers. What percentage of the news is false or inaccurate? 90%? 99%? Not that events didn't happen, but just the nature of reporting around the events, the accuracy. And then it's also not really publicized any corrections that are made. And usually they don't even make them. They just, well, that was what was reported. We reported it as fact. So it's just, yeah, it's very interesting to see how, of course, history is not often as written. Of course, history is written by the victors or the people in control. So the perpetrator, Stephen Paddock, 64-year-old former IRS auditor and real estate businessman who had been living 80 miles northeast of Las Vegas in a retirement community in Mesquite, Nevada. Paddock was twice divorced, had a long-term girlfriend, and had no known children. He was a son of Benjamin Paddock, a bank robber who was on the FBI's most wanted list between 1969 and 1977. It's a very interesting footnote there. Paddock's only recorded interactions with law enforcement were traffic citations. Paddock was a high-stakes gambler who placed bets at a high enough level to earn value comps, free benefits such as rooms and meals. He was a familiar figure to casino hosts in Las Vegas, but was not well known among other high-stakes gamblers because he mostly played video poker. He reportedly kept to himself and was a heavy drinker. Paddock had lost a significant amount of his wealth over the previous 2 years, but had paid off all gambling debts before the shooting. And that's another interesting note there. So, just real quick, I'm going to go into this. Basically, listening to the mainstream media or corrupt profiteers in power, the amount of lies and propaganda and disinfo that has been peddled, and at this point, obviously science is skepticism. So if you're a logical, scientifically minded individual and not a coincidence theorist who's just religiously clings to their faith in the establishment, if you have any kind of mental ability above a small child, and I don't want to insult small children. Small children can probably function, can probably do some of these mental exercises better than the indoctrinated adults. However, why would you buy this narrative? Now, it might be true. I'm not saying it's not true, of course. The narrative might be true, but the amount of times a lone gunman patsy was used in situations that defied all logic and laws of physics, at this point, why would anybody believe that it was the lone gunman, and if it was this gunman, that he acted alone? It's just, again, I'm not saying that it's not true. Maybe it happened this time. If you cry wolf long enough, eventually one time it might actually happen. Is this the time? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But to just blindly trust that it is after the amount of times that patsies have been used, it's just, I find it really silly that anybody would just lap it up without question, without verification. And of course, according to the wiki, there were 24 firearms in total used. 14 223 caliber AR-15 type rifles, 8 308 caliber AR-10 type rifles, 308 caliber bolt action rifle, and a 38 caliber revolver. That's a decent amount of weapons in a small location. So apparently he paid off all his gambling bets before he was set to do this and then kill himself. Is that typical? I don't know. Normally, gambling debts are what drive people to desperation and possibly insanity, but I don't know. Let's look again at the write-up here on the wiki, the official write-up. According to his girlfriend, Paddock repeatedly cased out Las Vegas from different windows in their room when they stayed at the Mandalay Bay a month before the attack. Paddock also may have considered attacking previous events. He had researched large-scale venues in cities such as Boston since last May 2017 and had reserved a room overlooking the August 27 Lollapalooza Festival in Chicago but did not use it. From September 17th, Paddock stayed at the Ogden in downtown Las Vegas, which overlooked the open-air Life is Beautiful festival that ran from September 22nd to September 24th. Paddock's internet search terms from mid-September included SWAT weapons, ballistics chart 308, SWAT Las Vegas, and do police use explosives? Now, another interesting point here. Obviously, the hopelessly indoctrinated coincidence theorists would take all of this at face value. But a critical thinking individual, if this is a patsy being set up by the government, obviously they could engineer those searches and then report them. They could do whatever. They could pay his girlfriend to say whatever or intimidate. Obviously, we don't need to look at all of the false confessions and police coercions and how they operate. And those are on small, tiny operations where it could have just been one person killing one person, or they're trying to solve one murder. Now look at something at this scale. If it was some kind of a cover-up and he was being used as a patsy, how difficult would it be to engineer these searches and report them as true, and then all the newspapers report them? I mean, is that really that difficult? Can a coincidence theorist wrap their mind around the basics of how a patsy is used? Do they even know what a patsy is? It seems like people just really get triggered anytime something is questioned or not as alleged, just terrified of having their reality shattered, that the corrupt profiteers that control them might say something that's not true. It's just really, really bizarre. The way that this propaganda regarding news, history, all these events are used. Now, obviously, let's not fall for any black and white fallacies. Let's not ignore Hanlon's razor. How competent are all these investigators? How competent are these news reporters? These people could also be telling what they believe to be the truth, and if obviously it's compartmentalized. So, like, all the people reporting this, obviously they probably think it's all true. These are just information given from the top. But similarly, the top could be mistaken as well. It might not be nefarious. But most people that are researching it heavily, the really, really big-time conspiracy theorists, they find major issues with this story. This is MINDSHOCK. The only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. So I'm not going to fall for any logical fallacies here and pretend to know anything for certain, because that's just quite silly. If you don't know, you don't know. And the arguments online, again, between coincidence theorists and conspiracy theorists, unless you have the top secret clearance and you know exactly what happened, if this was some kind of a patsy stage job, unless you have the clearance and you know for sure, you don't know either way. So it's always silly to see people claim with 100% certainty this happened or that happened. Oh, I know for sure that didn't happen. How would they know? All quite silly. All right. Paddock arrived at Mandalay Bay on September 25th, 2017, and booked into room 32-135, a complimentary room on the 32nd floor. 4 days later, he also checked into the directly connected room 32-134. Both suites overlook the site of the concert at Las Vegas Village. During his stay at Mandalay Bay, Paddock spent much of his time gambling, often at night. He interacted with employees more than 10 times, including twice on the day of the shooting. An MGM Resorts International spokesperson said they were all normal in nature. Cell phone records show that he also made multiple visits to his home in Mesquite. With frequent help from hotel bellmen, he brought 5 suitcases to his room on September 25th, 7 on the 26th, 2 on the 28th, 6 on the 30th, and 2 on October 1st. His arsenal of weapons, associated equipment, and ammunition included 14 AR-15 rifles, all of which were equipped with bump stocks, and 12 of which had 100-round magazines, 8 AR-10 type rifles, a bolt-action rifle, and a revolver. A bump stock modifies a semi-automatic weapon so that it can shoot in rapid succession, mimicking automatic fire. On September 30th, he placed Do Not Disturb signs on the doors of both rooms. The attack. The mass shooting occurred between 10:05 and 10:15 on October 1st, 2017, which was the third and final night of the festival. When the shooting began, country music singer Jason Aldean was giving the closing performance. Shortly before 10 p.m., hotel security guard Jesus Campos was sent to the 32nd floor to investigate an open door alert. He attempted to open a door that provided immediate access to the floor, but found that it would not open. After Campos entered the floor, he discovered an L-shaped bracket screwed into the door and door frame, which was responsible for barring the door from opening. After reporting the discovery to his dispatch center, he heard what he thought was the sound of rapid drilling coming from room 32-135 and went to investigate the matter. At approximately 10:05, he was hit in the right thigh by one of about 35 bullets that Paddock fired through the door of his suite. After Campos was hit, he took cover in the alcove between rooms 32-122 and 32-124 and immediately informed the hotel by radio and cell phone that he had been shot, although he believed he had been shot with a BB or pellet gun. At the same time, maintenance worker Stephen Schuck was on the same floor to fix the door that Campos had reported as being barricaded. Campos, who was already wounded, encountered Schuck and told him to take cover. Schuck contacted hotel dispatchers over his radio, informing them of the ongoing shooting and told them to call police. Neither the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department nor MGM Grand Resorts International, the Mandalay Bay's owner, have confirmed when information about the initial shooting was relayed to the police. So again, we have no independent verification here. After Paddock used a hammer to break two of the windows in both of his suites, he began shooting through them at 10:05 p.m. He ultimately fired over 1,000 rifle rounds, approximately 490 yards, into the festival audience. He initially started out with a few single gunshots before firing in bursts that ranged from 80 to 100 rounds. Many people in the crowd initially mistook the gunfire for fireworks. During the shooting, a security fence hindered concertgoers from fleeing the 15-acre concert lot. The gunfire continued with some momentary pauses over the span of 10 minutes and ended by 10:15 p.m. In addition to shooting at the concertgoers, Paddock fired 8 bullets at a large jet fuel tank at McCarran International Airport 2,000 feet away. 2 of the bullets struck the exterior of the tank, with 1 bullet penetrating the tank. The fuel did not explode because jet fuel is mostly kerosene, which is unlikely to ignite when struck by a bullet. During the shooting, police officers were initially confused whether the shots were coming from the Mandalay Bay, the nearby Luxor Hotel, or the festival grounds. There were also multiple false reports of additional shooters at other hotels on the Strip. I like how they just immediately called them false reports. I mean, how did they? It's just, yeah. It's weird. Officers eventually spotted multiple flashes of gunfire from the middle of the northern side of the Mandalay Bay and responded to the hotel. At 10:12 p.m., 2 officers on the 31st floor reported the sounds of gunfire on the floor above them. When officers arrived on the 32nd floor at 10:17 p.m. and encountered Campos a minute later, he directed them to Paddock's room and helped others evacuate. Campos was then directed to seek medical attention for himself. Between 10:26 and 10:30 p.m., 8 additional officers arrived at the 32nd floor. Some of those officers manually breached through the door Paddock had screwed shut with the bracket. The gunfire had ceased and the police moved systematically down the hallway, searching and clearing each room using a master key that was provided by Campos. At 10:55 p.m., the officers finished evacuating guests. At 11:20 p.m., police breached room 32-135 with explosives. Paddock was found dead on the floor from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Police then breached room 32-134 while entering the hotel's suite. An officer accidentally fired a 3-round burst from his weapon, but the bullets did not hit anyone. Interesting. At 11:27 p.m., officers announced over the police radio that a suspect was down. Now, okay, let's look at it this way. So if this is a propaganda, narrative steer, patsy setup, frame up, cover up, how would they do it? So let's say there were multiple shooters from multiple hotels. Now, if you're framing one guy, or even if the guy was really involved, and you want him to go down as a lone gunman type patsy, you would say false reports, as opposed to what would an honest reporter report, or how would an honest Wikipedia entry that wasn't peddling propaganda be phrased? They would probably say shooters were reported in multiple buildings. However, further investigated, they couldn't find evidence of that. How would you know it was a false report? Because what if it was true? Even if you go there and you find no evidence of it, how does that mean with 100% certainty that it was a false report and no one was there previously? Because again, if it was some kind of a patsy setup job, and I mean, it could have also be some kind of Manchurian candidate setup situation where he's either mind controlled to do this, or what would be really, really dark and disturbing if apparently either his family or he was threatened by certain individuals that they would kill 1 million people or they would blow up a bunch of cities if he didn't do this thing, and he had no choice. So he thought the lesser of two evils would be to shoot 100 people or a couple hundred people instead of having millions die because he didn't. Now I'm just, again, coming up with different theories. I'm not alleging any of these are true or untrue, but mentally, what kind of psychological torture could be inflicted upon an individual to make him carry out such an event, if he did indeed carry it out, which he might not have. And we haven't even gotten to the helicopters yet. All right, so let's go over the immediate response. McCarran International Airport, adjacent to the shooting site, was shut down for several hours. Approximately 300 people entered the airport grounds as they fled from the shooting. This prompted officials to shut down all 4 runways. More than 25 flights were rerouted to ensure that no aircraft would be hit by gunfire, while other flights were canceled before airfield operations resumed at 12:40 a.m. on October 2nd. Much of Las Vegas Boulevard was closed while police SWAT teams combed the venue and neighboring businesses. At approximately 2:45 p.m. on October 2nd, a state of emergency was declared in Clark County. Interesting, long after the gunman's dead. Early on October 2nd, Sheriff Lombardo identified the suspect as Stephen Paddock. Fatalities: 58 people were fatally shot at the music festival. Paddock's suicide was the only death at the Mandalay Bay Hotel. The fatalities included 36 women, 22 men. The oldest victim, 67, the youngest, 20, 35 from California, 6 from Nevada, 4 from Canada, 2 from Alaska and Utah, 1 from Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Washington State, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. It's a popular festival. The Clark County Coroner's Office determined that all 58 victims died as a result of gunshot wounds. 31 of the victims were pronounced dead at the scene, while the 27 others later succumbed to their wounds at the hospital. The incident was the deadliest mass shooting committed by an individual in the U.S., exceeding the death toll of the 2016 Orlando nightclub shooting, in which 49 people lost their lives. A 57-year-old woman from Mira Loma, California, was paralyzed and died at Redlands Community Hospital in Redlands on November 15, 2019. More than 2 years later, an autopsy was carried out to establish the cause and manner of her death. On December 18th, it was reported that the ruling on the cause and manner of her death was pending because investigators were waiting for laboratory test results. Approximately 869 people were injured, 413 of them with gunshot wounds or shrapnel injuries. In the aftermath, many victims were transported to area hospitals, which included University Medical Center of Southern Nevada, Sunrise Hospital and Medical Center, and at least one of the 6 hospitals of Valley Health System. Sunrise Hospital treated the largest portion of the wounded, 199 patients, 150 of which arrived within a time span of about 40 minutes. University Medical Center treated 104 patients. Additionally, 6 victims sought medical treatment in Southern California. UC Irvine Medical Center treated 4, and Loma Linda University Medical Centers treated 2. Victims of the shooting required blood transfusions, totaling 499 components in the first 24 hours of treatment, but the blood was rapidly replaced by available blood from local and national blood banks. University Medical Center, the Level 1 Trauma Center in Las Vegas, was difficult to access for more than 50% of patients transported by private vehicles because Interstate 15, the most direct route from the shooting location, was closed to the public. Also, an erroneous emergency service announcement made 1 hour after the shooting reported UMC had reached capacity and was on diversion. This confusion persisted for several hours and led to most patients being transported to Sunrise, a Level 2 trauma center. Surviving witnesses: several people at the shooting were also present during the November 2018 mass shootings at the Borderline Bar and Grill in Thousand Oaks, California, which left 13 dead, including the gunman. One person said the number of Las Vegas survivors at the bar may have been as high as 60. It was confirmed that a survivor of the Las Vegas shooting died in the Thousand Oaks shooting. Now let's look at this section right here, very interesting section, Wikipedia. Misinformation, fake news, and conspiracy theories. Are they ironically talking about the mainstream narrative? Following the shooting, misinformation and fake news about the shooter's identity and motive went viral on social media. A 4chan poll thread which misidentified the shooter and described him as a registered Democrat briefly featured in the top stories section of a Google search for the shooter's name. This was further circulated by a number of websites, including the Gateway Pundit. The fake news website Your News Wire spreads false information about a second gunman purportedly shooting from the 4th floor of the hotel. Two of Facebook's top trending pages were items from Sputnik, a Russian government news agency. These included one story that falsely claimed the FBI had linked the shooter to a terrorist group. The stories were later removed from Sputnik with an apology. Stories linking the shooter to the Antifa movement have also been discredited. The terrorist group Islamic States of Iraq and the Levant, ISIS, claimed that Paddock was its soldier and that he had answered Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi's call to attack coalition countries' citizens. ISIS provided no evidence for its claim and had previously released multiple false claims of responsibility for incidents with which it had no known connection. On October 9, 2017, the FBI declared that Paddock's attack was not linked to international terrorism. Google and Facebook were criticized for displaying such false news stories in some of their search results. The two technology companies were said to have failed in their responsibility of keeping these from reaching the public. Facebook later said its algorithms were designed to detect and remove false stories, but failed to work adequately in this instance. Or probably in any instance, because look at the mainstream falsities being peddled by all social media. Survivors of the shooting have been accused of being crisis actors, and some have received death threats on social media. Conspiracy theorists, once again, we have here black and white fallacy, parts to a whole, logical fallacies. All of these, they're trying to paint critical thinkers, all critical thinkers, conspiracy theorists, as part of this tiny little minority. Conspiracy theorists have claimed that there were multiple shooters and the details of this massacre are being covered up for the sake of promoting gun control laws. You know what's funny is that sounds less crazy than the mainstream narrative. After some media outlets reported that YouTube search results for information about the shooting returned links to conspiracy videos, YouTube said it had tweaked its search algorithm to promote news sources which it considered more authoritative. Now, of course, authoritative has nothing to do with truth. It's whatever the propaganda the authorities want the masses to believe. Clearly, free speech has been on its way out for a while now. Some experts have said the removal of this content ironically fuels conspiracy theories by making a cover-up seem evident. Indeed it does it not? Because you can find the most ridiculous nonsense not censored. But certain things they don't want talked about, that get censored. The gun control discussion. The shooting prompted support in the U.S. Congress for assault weapons legislation that would ban bump stocks. Many congressional Democrats and some Republicans expressed support. House leaders said the issue of bump stock regulation should be decided by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which originally approved bump stocks. The NRA came out in favor of administrative bump fire stock regulations. Firearms retailers reported increased consumer interest in bump stocks. You know what's also interesting is that in this summer of 2020, with all the protests and rioting going on, if there's a gigantic group of rioters coming at your house and you need to protect your family, would semi-auto suffice? Would a bump stock help? Would fully automatic weapons help? And if criminals don't follow laws, how are the bans going to do anything? And of course, if you haven't checked out Gun Control, a logical analysis on MINDSHOCK, I do break that down. Again, this has nothing to do with political parties. I'm objectively looking at the logic here. According to different studies, if millions of lives are saved due to the legal use of firearms, why would those numbers want to be minimized? Because even if let's say mass shootings go up and even more people are killed, removing the guns from the hands of civilians owning them legally would cause even more people to die. So again, it's just looking at it logically and objectively. If these numbers are true, it's very bizarre how some claim, well, we don't want to see mass shootings, but they don't care about the millions of adults and children saved every year. Not to mention the real numbers are unknown, because how do you know if criminals would be deterred from assaulting or killing someone because they were either open carrying or they brandished a weapon? And those incidents are not reported because most criminals are pretty much cowards. They don't want to enter a situation that's kind of even. They want to have the upper hand. So if they obtain their guns either legally or on the black market, I mean, criminals don't seem to be inclined to follow laws. That's what makes them criminals. So if they have got guns on the black market or wherever, who do they want to trifle with? Some unarmed guy, some unarmed anti-gun guy in his house who can't protect his family, or a well-armed individual. And if that well-armed individual even has fully automatic weapons or bump stocks or whatever, would a criminal want to invade that house? Or would they want to go to a house where they might have to only deal with either no weapons or some guy with some revolver? So again, it's just the narrative to disarm legal citizens seems quite obvious, especially if you study history in all these other countries. Again, I'm not saying that a magic fairy tale world where no one had guns wouldn't be a better place. It's just there's a lot of crazy people out there. There's a lot of criminals out there that aren't going to follow laws. So making laws for people who are going to follow them to deter people that don't follow them, I mean, how is it just... there doesn't seem to be a lot of logic in that line of thinking. Just really, really bizarre. All right, so in November 2017, a lawsuit was filed on behalf of 450 of the victims of the shooting, which claimed that the Mandalay Bay Hotel had shown negligence by allowing Paddock to bring a large amount of weaponry into the building. In July 2018, MGM Resorts International countersued hundreds of victims, claiming that it had no liability of any kind for the attack. On October 3rd, 2019, MGM Resorts reached a settlement of between $735 and $800 million with the victims of the shooting. So let's look at the investigation. According to authorities with the Clark County Commission, the name 1 October was declared the official title for investigations into the mass shooting. Early reports, investigators found hidden surveillance cameras that were placed inside and outside the hotel room, presumably so Paddock could monitor the arrival of others. The cameras were not in record mode. Police said a handwritten note found in the room indicated Paddock had been calculating the distance, wind, and trajectory from his 32nd floor hotel suite to the concert goers he was targeting on the festival lot. At a press conference October 4th, Clark County Sheriff Joe Lombardo stated there was evidence, which he declined to discuss, that Paddock intended to escape the scene and that he may have had assistance from an accomplice. Investigators searched Paddock's room and found a bulletproof vest and breathing apparatus, neither of which were used by Paddock. There have been several changes in the official account and timeline of Paddock's shooting of hotel security guard Campos. Police officials described these adjustments as minute changes that are common in complex investigations. But are they really in 2017 in the modern era? In their first statement about the incident, police officials inaccurately reported that Campos arrived on the scene after Paddock began firing into the crowd. In the second statement, police officials reported, again inaccurately, that Campos was shot 6 minutes before Paddock began firing into the crowd. That report had been based on a 9:59 p.m. notation in a hotel security log, which in a third statement was determined to have been the time when Campos encountered the barricaded door. Now, if humans are this fallible, what makes them think that everybody should just take on blind faith as gospel truth on face value the current narrative? It's just, I mean, we have, again, it's just an endless boy that cried wolf situation. Not necessarily nefarious information, but just blindly trusting that authorities are not mistaken seems a bit bizarre to a critical thinking mind. Sheriff Lombardo dismissed allegations that the changing timeline was the result of some kind of conspiracy between the police department, the FBI, and MGM Resorts International, saying nobody is attempting to hide anything in reference to this investigation. Now, what would he say if they were trying to hide it? Would he admit it? Or would he be expected to say, nobody's attempting to hide anything in reference to this investigation? The dynamics and size of this investigation requires us to go through voluminous amounts of information in order to draw an accurate picture. Preliminary investigation. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department released a preliminary report on the event on January 18th, 2018. Police speculate that Paddock acted alone and have not determined his motives. No links have been identified to any hate groups, terrorist groups, or ideologies, and he did not record a reason for his actions. On February 2nd, 2018, Douglas Haig, an Arizona ammunitions dealer, was charged in a Nevada federal court with conspiracy to manufacture and sell armor-piercing ammunition without a license after his fingerprints were discovered on unfired armor-piercing ammunition inside Paddock's suite. Final investigative report. On August 3rd, 2018, Las Vegas Sheriff Joe Lombardo held a press conference on the release of the LVMPD criminal investigative report of the 1 October mass casualty shooting. He said that a 10-month investigation had revealed no evidence of conspiracy or a second gunman. And would it, if there was a conspiracy, would their investigation reveal it? And that the gunman's motive had not been definitively determined. Lombardo said, "What we have been able to answer are the questions of who, what, when, where, and how, although some find those answers highly suspect. We have not been able to definitively answer is why Stephen Paddock committed this act." A report published by the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit in January 2019 said that there was no single or clear motivating factor for the shooting. So the other thing that's interesting is if there was a cover-up or FBI or government complicity, the same agencies investigating the incident, what would they be expected to say if they're the ones involved and perpetrating the cover-up? And what's bizarre is the coincidence there is they just do not have a handle on what conflict of interest is. Because if there were a conspiracy, how would it be handled by these particular agencies? Those are the real questions that coincidence theorists are just absolutely terrified of asking. Weaponry, 24 firearms, a large quantity of ammunition, and numerous high-capacity magazines capable of holding up to 100 rounds apiece were found in the suite. 14 of the firearms were 223 cal AR-15 type semi-automatic rifles, 3 manufactured by Colt, 2 by Daniel Defense, 2 by FN Herstal, 2 by LWRC International, 2 by POF USA, 1 with a 223 caliber Wild Chamber by Christensen Arms, 1 made to order by LMT, and 1 by Novesk. The others were 8 308 caliber AR-10 type rifles, 1 308 caliber Ruger American bolt-action rifle, and 1 38 cal Smith & Wesson Model 342 revolver. The AR-15 rifles were fitted with vertical forward grips and bump fire stocks, the latter of which allowed for recoil to actuate their triggers at a rate of 90 rounds in 10 seconds. The AR-10 rifles were equipped with various telescopic sights and mounted on bipods. Paddock was found to have fired a total of 1,058 rounds from 15 of the firearms, 1,049 from 12 AR-15 style rifles, 8 from 2 AR-10 style rifles, and the round used to kill himself from the Smith & Wesson revolver. During the subsequent investigation, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives determined that the firearms found in his hotel room, along with more guns found in his homes, had been legally purchased in Nevada, California, Texas, and Utah. In the month preceding the shooting, he had attempted to purchase tracer ammunition, but the gun dealer he approached did not have the item in stock. He bought tracer ammunition from a private seller at Phoenix, Arizona gun show. In addition, ammonium nitrate, often used in improvised explosive devices, was found in the trunk of his Hyundai Tucson SUV, along with 1,600 rounds of ammunition and 50 pounds of tannerite, a binary explosive used to make explosive targets for gun ranges. Under Sheriff Kevin McMahill said that while Paddock had nefarious intent with the material, he did not appear to have assembled an explosive device. And tracer ammunition refers to bullets or cannon caliber projectiles that are built with a small pyrotechnic charge in their base. When fired, the pyrotechnic composition is ignited by the burning powder and burns very brightly, making the projectile trajectory visible to the naked eye during daylight and very bright during nighttime firing. This allows the shooter to visually trace the flight path of the projectile and thus make necessary ballistic corrections without having to confirm projectile impacts and without even using the sights of the weapon. Alright, so those are the basic allegations by the mainstream. That's the official narrative. How often is the official narrative true? I don't pretend to know, but as history has taught us over the past centuries, is that not often. So some of the issues are, of course, he's using all of these different guns, so he'd have to drop a gun, pick up another gun. So the critical thinkers, aka conspiracy theorists, supposedly after the FBI took over the investigation, his house somehow burned down with all of the evidence. The photos of the hotel room only show roughly 50 spent shells from the released photographs. So the biggest mass shooting in U.S. history by a single shooter is also pretty much happens to be the least covered in comparison to all these other shootings. It's really, really bizarre. So conspiracy theorists, aka critical thinkers, also point to what was reported is the day after his brother had numerous press interviews where he claimed this whole thing made no sense. He was arrested for possessing several hundred terabytes of child abuse images on a 20-year-old computer running Windows 95, according to the photos taken by the FBI. So if that's true, that is quite bizarre. Now, of course, the greatest evidence is the videos from the shooting that night. So obviously it appears to be fully automatic fire. However, there's something called a crank. So now, apparently there's different versions of crank. The GAT crank is a rapid-fire trigger actuator, perfect for putting multiple rounds on a target quickly and efficiently. Going to the range or plinking in the woods is more enjoyable at 3 shots per rotation of the crank. So this is called the GAT crank, which I found, but there's other cranks. Now, what's interesting is the rate of fire fluctuates, which you can see that it goes faster, and it both goes faster and slower, which is a bit bizarre. There's a hotel guest at the Delano posted this particular video where you could hear the rate of fire fluctuating. Now, the other thing in some of these videos that you can hear, unless this guy is operating 2 guns, you can hear a second gun firing while the first one is still firing. And also, with the reverb on them, they do not appear to be firing from the same location. So, again, an audio engineer could dissect this a little bit better than me. I'm not an audio engineer, but just judging from these videos and the sounds, it really does not appear, unless there's something else causing that to appear different. So this is what a gunner, an infantry gunner, posted about this. This is not one gun being fired. There are at least 2 guns being fired, as you can hear the second one start before the first one ends, and they are being fired from different positions. It also sounds like full auto drum belt fed weaponry, not ARs, not AKs. The reloads take way too long for it to be simple magazine fed rifles. So what are the type of guns used on helicopters? Yeah, just very, very bizarre. And this is actually these are posts from the time of the shooting, before anything was known or reported other than there was a shooting. There was also someone reported on CNN that there were shots at the Bellagio and there were officers swarming the Bellagio. There were a number of videos ground level at the concert, and the commentary on them, some of these are hard to find now, they've been taken down. This is all, what I'm reading is from Reddit and Twitter at the time of the attack, so before anything was known. There are several different guns firing at the same time. This can't be a single shooter. There is no question about it, at least 2 different guns firing at the same time. It's interesting what people report and what the perception is before the narrative is established. Kind of like with all the explosions going off in the World Trade Center. At the time, everything was unfolding before anybody knew what the narrative was supposed to be. So there was no narrative to go along with. It's quite interesting. And even this people discussing this isn't some lone wolf gone mad. And then another poster said, except that is the narrative they fixate on every time. Now, again, this is before any narrative was put forth. These are what people were saying about this. It's just bizarre. Another gun expert chimed in here. Belt-fed full auto, maybe a drum. Those aren't 3-round bursts. That's a light machine gun, usually tripod-supported, fully automatic. You can't buy that legally anywhere in the U.S. Also, different videos, you can see muzzle flashes lower than the 32nd floor. This has been gone over by multiple people. I'm not sure what that means. Again, it just seems like we're going to get into the helicopters in a moment, but it is bizarre. There's definitely inconsistencies here. Some people believe that the other muzzle flashes were just lights that were being used to divert attention. So again, if this is not a guy acting alone, if he's got one or multiple accomplices, if it's even the guy, would they be using some kind of lights to simulate muzzle fire in an attempt to distract police by having them go there? I don't know. Bizarre. So here's a post. Before we get into the crazier conspiracy theories, I'm going to go over a general funny business issue. This is a post, Unresolved Mysteries subreddit. Recently, someone posted a thread discussing the possible motive Stephen Paddock had for committing the 2017 Las Vegas shooting. Although I agree that we will probably never know for sure what his motive was, that thread got me thinking about the case in general, and there is one more mystery about this case that puzzles me. A relative lack of media interest and press coverage. Sure, the story was all over the news for a few days, but then it just sort of blew over and more or less stayed that way. Now, I've written about some underreported cases before: Florida transgender women murders, Detroit serial killers, Chicago strangulation murders, Sheila Davis case, so I can see how some cases slipped through the cracks from time to time, but that was literally the deadliest single-person alleged mass shooting in U.S. history. 58 people were killed, 851 were injured. There are thousands of people affected by this case, be it the surviving victims who were injured or families who lost their loved ones. From what I've been able to find out, the press never even interviewed some casino employees, blackjack dealers, cocktail waitresses, security guards that might have had contact with Paddock shortly prior to the shooting, or even for months or years prior to the incident in case he was a regular at the casino. Some of the general statements were released, but nothing specific, and almost none of those people appeared on TV. Yes, one of the security guards present during the shooting gave an interview on Ellen. Yep, Ellen. As for the authorities, it took them months to release security footages from the casino showing Paddock in the days prior to the shooting. I mean, within days of 9/11, there were security footages of hijackers boarding the planes all over the media, and that was back in 2001. And other than these footages, it seems there's only one photograph of this guy on the internet. The one where he's drinking in a bar with his girlfriend, with his eyes closed. Did Paddock really have no profile on Facebook, Twitter, or other social media sites? And was that bar photo the only photograph of him that his girlfriend published on his on her Facebook page? They couldn't have pulled up his most recent DMV photograph or asked his family to provide a more recent photo? And what is up with Paddock's home being broken into shortly after the shooting? Was that ever solved? Who did that and why? I mean, this is kind of fitting. I think it's kind of fitting that monsters like Paddock don't get some huge notoriety in the end, even if that wasn't their motive for the murders. And there are some theories that a limited media exposure of such crimes can discourage copycats, but keeping in mind the sheer number of victims, this is just weird, almost creepy. By scale, this almost seems like an equivalent of Columbine shooting being reduced to a criminology footnote. So how do you explain the seeming lack of media interest and exposure in such a huge case? Do you think that the casino owners paid the press off to keep this under wraps as much as possible, hoping to avoid bad publicity? Was the press simply not that interested because there was no particular angle or issue to explore other than gun control, since Paddock's motives remain unknown? Is mass shooting eerily not such a big news anymore? Not even the one that claims dozens of victims? Was it a combination of those factors or some other reason entirely? I mean, how much could casino owners really pay off national news agencies that have nothing to do with Las Vegas? I don't know. Someone replied, for the same reason incidents at Disney are never reported or underreported. They know how to make things go away, and that includes their staff not being allowed to talk about it, and if they do, they will be sued to hell and back. I don't know, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, though. I mean, the whole thing is a little bizarre given the usual reaction for even, for any kind of shooting, any kind of mass shooting. And this is the opposite reaction where nothing adds up. So here's a post close to the time of the event 2 years ago on the conspiracy subreddit, a favorite for many. The absurdity of the Las Vegas shooting. Let's look at the ridiculousness of this case thus far. 1. Stephen Paddock was a professional gambler who made a living off video poker. A successful casino gambler can only be found riding unicorns. Supposedly a rich real estate guy, but no one knows of any holdings or transactions in his name. Throughout his employment career, he worked for the post office and the IRS. It seems they pay extremely well since real estate investing needs quite a bit of seed money. 2. Jesus Campos was a security guard who was shot when he knocked on the door of Paddock's room, but only he wasn't shot then but 6 minutes before the shooting began, and didn't bring the police security into the room until 58 people were dead and nearly 500 people were critically injured. Update, October 13th. The timeline has changed again, so now the story is Campos encountered Paddock 6 minutes prior to shooting start and was shot 1 minute before actual fire began. Make what you will out of this. Jesus Campos' house is guarded by someone who works for a possibly fictitious security company with no physical address and whose license to operate ran out last year. Why does a witness to a mass killing with the killer dead need protection? Why hasn't he given one interview to anyone? This is an interesting article from the New York Post. Jesus Campos reportedly left the country days after Vegas massacre. The 25-year-old entered the U.S. from Mexico at the San Ysidro border, crossing into California 1 week after the mass shooting. It's unclear how long Campos was out of the country. The documents only show that he re-entered the U.S. The young man reportedly crossed the border at the same location in January. The new information raises even more questions about Stephen Paddock's October 1st massacre, such as why authorities would allow Campos to leave the country in the middle of their investigation, or how the security guard managed to make it down to Mexico with a gunshot wound to his leg. Campos reportedly took a bullet from gunman Stephen Paddock at the start of his killing spree. I mean, this is slightly better reporting, reportedly. The union that represents him told Fox they were aware of his trip to Mexico and claimed it was a pre-planned visit. What's unclear, though, is why the group didn't report his whereabouts in the days following the massacre. State records obtained by Fox on Wednesday also showed that the 25-year-old is actually not registered as a security guard with Nevada's Private Investigators Licensing Board. The Clark County Sheriff's Office declined to comment when asked what license is required to be a security guard at a Las Vegas casino. Jesus Campos is a victim, and we don't speak about victims, a sheriff's spokesperson said. Wow, okay. Now, you can see why certain conspiracy theorists, aka critical thinkers, are finding this official narrative problematic, because once you start to go deep into the details, it seems like nothing really adds up. And it's more convenient just to sweep everything under the rug. Now, was this guy ever licensed? I mean, I don't know. It's just the whole thing is bizarre. And also bizarre, yeah, in this kind of situation, investigation, particularly when he's wounded, he's allowed to leave, or did he run away?
Was the sole eyewitness that would investigators allow Jesus Campos, who again was the sole eyewitness that we know of, to the shooting from within the building, to leave the country shortly after while the investigation is still going on? I'm baffled by that.
It's very strange, Tucker.
Yeah, so it's pretty bizarre. So there's even more questions about this. This is Newsweek, October 10th, 2017, that has an interesting footnote here. Who is Jesus Campos? Las Vegas security guard raises new questions about shooting. As questions spiral about a significant shift in the timeline of the Las Vegas shooting, a security guard stands in the middle of the controversy. Jesus Campos. At first, Campos, a security guard at the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino, was hailed as a hero for helping guide police to gunman Stephen Paddock's room on the 32nd floor. Police said Campos was shot in the leg at the end of Paddock's assault on concertgoers, potentially distracting the gunman and causing him to panic and kill himself. Huh. Does that seem likely? But now questions have been raised after Clark County Sheriff Joe Lombardo revised the timeline and said Campos had actually been shot at about 9:59 p.m., a full 6 minutes before the mass shooting began at 10:05 p.m., which means the guard could have instead led Paddock to start opening fire on the crowd for fear of being caught. Police said it was difficult to identify the source of the bullets during the attack, and the confusion added more minutes to their lengthy response. But the revised timeline shows officers would have known where Paddock was before the mass shooting even started. Did Campos call 911? What happened during those 6 minutes? Much of Campos' story and background remains a mystery. Campos' co-worker, Liliana Rodriguez, started a GoFundMe account for him on October 3rd, explaining that he'd been shot while on, quote, random patrol, end quote, and it could have been any one of us. Funds will be used to provide relief and financial support for him while he gets back on his feet. Rodriguez's online petition says, "This is a young man that I work with day in and day out. Any financial support would be appreciated for the time he would need to recover." A picture of Campos wasn't displayed as part of the fund because Rodriguez indicated that due to privacy from the media, we do not feel comfortable publishing a photo. During a brief phone conversation with ABC News, Campos said, "I'm fine. I was just doing my job." Okay, so on Tuesday, Vegas Metro Police Undersheriff Kevin McMahill explained more about Campos' actions the night of the shooting, helping fill in some of what happened ahead of the attack. He told KNPR, a local NPR affiliate, that Campos went up to the 32nd floor to investigate a door alarm. While on the 32nd floor, he found that a stairwell door was jammed and radioed down to maintenance. Campos heard a drilling sound and thought it was odd. A maintenance worker came up to the 32nd floor. As the pair started talking, Paddock began firing through the door of his room, first with a single-fire gun, then with a rapid-fire rifle. Police have said that when Campos radioed what happened, it helped them track where Paddock was holed up. McMahill didn't elaborate on the 6 minutes or why police found it difficult to locate Paddock when, according to the new timeline, they had his location minutes before the assault started. So again, a lot of questions here. If everything happened as purported, would there be all these bizarre anomalies? And then Campos, of course, there's a fundraiser for Campos on GoFundMe while he's driving to Mexico. He was driving his own car while shot in the leg. Is that the alleged story? I don't know. It's all quite bizarre. But let's go back to the absurdity of the Las Vegas shooting post. And of course, he was on the phone there, so I guess that doesn't qualify as a actual interview. 4 Stephen Paddock's house gets robbed while the FBI is combing over it for evidence. No further words needed here. All right. So let's examine this. How many straws are coincidence theorists willing to grasp to cover that one? I mean, that one's just bizarre. As stated, I don't think there needs to be anything, any further words there. Okay, 5. Jesus Campos disappears right before he is to give 5 interviews, including Hannity. No one, including the FBI, knows where he is. So the FBI has lost the key witness to their investigation. Meanwhile, scary guys are guarding his house 24 hours a day. And of course, there's footage here from the Gateway Pundit of a reporter that went to his yard and encountered this shady security protection. The guard there apparently identified himself as Troy Goff, said he works for a company called On Scene that has been hired out to provide Campos with armed security protection, and yet nobody knows where he is. According to Loomer and fellow journalist Mike Tokes, On Scene is at best a dubious security company. The business license for On Scene expired January 2017, at the beginning of the year. Their address is a virtual address. Okay, quite bizarre. So, yes, Jesus Campos' house is guarded by someone who works for a possibly fictitious security company with no physical address and whose license to operate ran out last year. So they lost the key witness, but this other shady security company with no license is guarding his house 24 hours a day. All right. 6. Jesus Campos drives a Corvette with no license plate and whose registration points to 2006 on a security guard salary. 7. Hotel casinos, the single most extensively surveilled buildings in the world, cannot produce even one clip of Paddock going on about his business. This was initially on, so months later, footage could have been fabricated. Just a quick aside here, even during Columbine, the footage, the library security footage, it was sent to Quantico for a couple hours before it was given to the news agencies to air. So, interesting point. Columbine was, of course, 1999. Now we're in 2017, the end of 2017, and they need months and months to produce the security footage. 8, he has 23 guns and dozens of loaded magazines, but takes over a minute between volleys of fire. 9, no trails of social media exist for Stephen Paddock, nothing at all. Paddock must not have known that the internet existed. I mean, there were those other searches, of course, but those could have been fabricated. And we do see this in certain cases where they're setting up or framing a patsy. It's almost like they fabricate identities for these people. It's quite bizarre. 10, the media is continually pushing the narrative, we may never know his motives, over and over again as if they're trying to tell us something. Is anyone buying this? Is anyone foolish enough to think that it was a planned mass murder by a crazy guy? So people chimed in. Apparently he's also a pilot. He's an owner of 2 small planes. No confirmed evidence of his varied business interests or what those businesses were. Stephen Paddock is the new most interesting man in the world. So someone chimed in with this. One theory that fits almost everything so far was that he was dealing guns and that the hotel room was set up for a sale. It explains why he has so many guns in the hotel room despite not needing very many, and how they were propped up on display. It explains why he was shot in the chest when the deal went south instead of a normal suicide wound in the head or mouth. It explains why he didn't have an escape plan. It explains the presence of the cameras on the hallway and inside. It explains his strange lifestyle. It's possible the buyers were secretly planning on attacking the crowd, or it's possible one of the buyers went psycho. Now, you know what's crazy? That seems like an outlandish scenario, but it makes more sense than the official narrative. It ties up more of those ends. It still doesn't, the multiple shooters angle still doesn't quite work. Someone also posted this that was interesting. There are body heat sensors in the smart cooling system in the hotel. They know when you are in the room and when you aren't. That's kind of creepy. Other people believe that the security guard was somehow involved with Paddock, whether or not it was he was an arms dealer or not. And now some people going against the arms deal, they point to the gun registrations in his name and all that. But if they're framing him as a patsy, those would be quite easy to manipulate. Once since deleted account has posted this, he was probably staged in the room while he knew the two helicopters flying around the entire duration of the shooting were actually firing upon the crowd. He most likely wasn't alone in the room at some point, and this definitely seems like a false flag with a greater agenda which doesn't end with Paddock. Someone also theorized that if the first gunshot that brought the security guard to the room was Paddock being killed, either by another potential buyer or whatever situation is going down. Now, the certain coincidence theorists that point against the theory of the helicopters being the helicopters doing the shooting, of course, is that there's always helicopters flying around Las Vegas, tours or whatnot. But again, does that point away or does that point to it? Because if you're going to shoot from helicopters, how dumb would you be to go up there when no helicopters are supposed to be up there? If they're always supposed to be helicopters flying around and it's not unusual, that's called blending in. Again, the coincidence theorists, for whatever reason, they just do not engage basic logic and reason when analyzing any potential theories. Now, again, I'm not saying that happened. I'm saying if it happened, it would make it more likely, not less likely. So the things being used to explain away, those are the actual things that perpetrators would be using to blend in. I mean, not just in this case, but in any case, it's quite bizarre. So other people did some digging. Supposedly this guy is connected to Lockheed Martin somehow. And the Lockheed Martin comes up a lot in conspiracies and a lot of different cases. I mean, it's really bizarre. And again, it could all be mere coincidence, of course. Mere coincidence. Okay, more bizarre oddities here. There was body armor in the room, but he didn't put it on even after the supposed engagement in the hallway. Does that mean he was killed? That first shot was him being killed, and he didn't get to execute this plan if it was his plan. Okay. So another issue here, part of the plan was to not use or wear any tactical anything, which is unexpected based on the whole he had an estimated $100,000 in firearms. There were only photos of a few rifles in the room. Where are the rest? From the photos released in spent brass, should be a lot like near 1,000 round. In pic 90, about 1 mag are seen. He was wearing actual slipper-type shoes, so he was going to make his escape running with slippers, carrying his personal platoon army. If he was found in slippers, it is strange. Is it more likely someone killed him, whether or not he was attempting to do a deal or shoot people or whatever, or he was a patsy, whatever it may be, was he shot before anything that he could plan, if anything, would go down? The 8-hour gambling sessions and all other observed behavior seem to fit with who he was at a place he normally was doing what he normally does. Over 20 long arms is a pretty big red flag. Too many for one person only argument to explain that he was insane and did insane things, but that excuse can't be used since we are to believe he covered all tracks of motive perfectly. The sheer number of rifles is one of the bigger clues. Fair point there. Now, I don't look, again, I don't look at autopsy photos or dead body photos or any of that stuff. Not my thing, but the people who have looked at it said the apparent chest wound and lack of visible brain damage in the photo. The death photo released shows signs he was shot in center mass and blood poured out of his mouth like a chest hit would do. Who commits suicide by shooting in their chest seems like a headshot would be expected. Indeed. If you shoot yourself in the chest, you probably wouldn't die instantly. There's a lot more pain and suffering. And someone shooting you would be much more likely to shoot you in the chest than you shooting yourself in the chest. That is very, very bizarre. Another oddity here, the Chan post 20 hours before Hannity aired that Campos would be the guest and flip the script. He was put in contact with Hannity by Trump even. It's totally out of a movie-level stuff we are dealing with. Post even said Campos is in fear and backed out earlier, so not that big of a surprise the interview didn't air. He had 5 union-booked interviews for last night when he went missing from the building where they were going to be interviewed. It's so spooky, and it's not even Halloween yet. So the gist is he told the cops something other than what we were told, and he can expose it apparently. Probably he was shot not at the same time and location as they say. This is backed up by the shot audio analysis. The first shots were into the crowd, not the tank, and most definitely not inside the hotel. The ammo. Crazy extreme amounts. Here he loaded up thousands of rounds into mostly 100-round Surefire brand mags. That's so much, it's also a red flag the person had such an extreme amount that he barely made it through what he had. I'm certain there are more unfired mags in that room than empty ones. I counted 13 stacked up perfectly and a few used or on the rifles. Then, in the car, there was a bunch more of the same. So the planning appears large in scope, meant to last longer or have at least more rounds fired. Reeks of missing shooters or other explanations. Another point, reload rate is odd, shows signs of an ill-trained person or something that requires a lot of moving parts to reload, like a belt feed. Rate of fire sounds significantly slower than all the YouTube AR bump stock videos. At 400 yards, the bump stocks shot group sizes from one impact to next would be likely hundreds of feet. A small movement of the barrel at that distance makes the grouping wildly ineffective. A bump stock at that distance would be less effective than a normal semi would. Now, crank triggers have been out for many years. Some allow 3 shots per full turn, and some can do 4. This could be set up so that the accuracy remains because this works amazing if you secured the rifle to a table or something with no or little movement will happen, even at a high rate of fire. People can jerk a trigger around 5 to 8 shots per second with good AR triggers, not bump anything, just a quality trigger. Anyway, a crank would be effective at that range if it was secured. A bump stock can't be secured really. Bipods work well, but no matter what, the entire rifle is violently moving back and forth. Let me round this episode out with 5 conspiracy theories about the Las Vegas shooting. This was posted on the Odyssey Online. With investigators getting no closer to finding Paddock's motive, here are a few theories for why exactly this massacre may have happened. This is October 10th, 2017. In the wake of modern America's most deadly mass shootings, the Vegas massacre has sparked controversy all over the world. Stephen Paddock's motive is still unclear. But the shooting was nonetheless a deliberate act of terrorism. With the loss of 59 lives and over 400 people injured in the shooting, thousands of people had brought forth their own theories about the strange mass homicide. This article is in no way disrespecting the victims of the mass shooting. Coincidence theorists do like to pretend that it does to shut down any conversation about anything or verification of any kind. However, with the thousands of news and media outlets covering the shooting, details have become hazy concerning Paddock's motive and decision. There are thousands of conspiracy theories arising in the wake of this tragedy, as the inconsistencies of this case are very obvious to onlookers, or at least non-coincidence theorists. As a result of the ongoing investigation of the Las Vegas massacre still happening, below are 5 of the largely believed conspiracy theories concerning the Las Vegas massacre. But first, let's mention some things. Stephen Paddock was a 64-year-old man. He managed to carry up to 400 pounds of ammunition and explosives up 30 floors, set up a concealed sniper nest, disarmed fire alarms and other security systems in place at the casino, while also removing a window to do this. Keep in mind that the window weighed 800 pounds and was hurricane-proof glass. And then rained aimed automatic gunpowder for up to 10 minutes, all with no military experience and no motive. How did he do this on his own? So let's go through these conspiracy theories. 1. The shooting was devised by the government, mainly the left wing, to provide a reason for more gun control or the abolishment of gun attainment rights. There are tons of theories that this massacre was devised by the left to reshape NRA legislation. I would get more into this, but the politics are too sensitive right now for the extent of this tragedy. 2. This was a Muslim terrorist attack carried out by an Islam convert. 3. Someone pushed their way to the front row and told concert goers they were, quote, all going to die tonight, end quote. A Hispanic-looking woman at the concert who pushed her way to the front of the line made a scene and told all of the people in line that they were all going to die tonight 45 minutes before the concert, complicating the claim that this was a one-person shooter attack and involved no other parties. An interview with one of the victims confesses that a woman and her boyfriend kept messing with a woman near them, telling her that she was going to die. Security escorted the couple out before they made anyone else unnerved. These two people were essentially telling people on the strip that they were going to die, and then shortly after a mass shooting happens, kind of suspicious. 4, there was more than one shooter in the Las Vegas shooting, proven by cell phone footage. 5, this was the result of a failed sting operation. Police found several pounds of ammonium nitrate, a chemical used to make explosives, in Paddock's suite. A theory for this is that Paddock was setting up a sting operation to illegally sell ammunition and explosives to a terrorist organization, and the operation must have caused conflict in some way. A story posted on 4chan.org, posted by an alleged police officer who claims to be a first responder to the case, believes that this was definitely a sting op gone wrong. He believes that the terrorist organization, or people that Paddock was selling the ammunition to, shot Paddock and carried out a terrorist attack. In addition, Paddock worked for several military contractors like NASA, which proves that Paddock may have had reason to carry out this operation. He believes that the terrorist organization or people that Paddock was selling the ammunition to shot Paddock and carried out a terrorist attack. This would explain why he had 40 automatic weapons, pounds of explosives, bomb-making chemicals, and materials in his car and his room. And it would also explain why he sent $100,000 to the Philippines just a week before the shooting. In addition, Paddock worked for several military contractors like NASA, which proves that Paddock may have had reason to carry out this operation. Very bizarre, and Paddock's connections. Now, the final point here regarding the helicopters, there is footage, not just of helicopters, of course, but it's difficult to tell whether the helicopter lights, it kind of looks like muzzle flashes, but it could be regular helicopter lights flashing. So, yeah, we don't know. However, there's an interesting interview. Kelly Moore, Time Magazine interview. I almost felt like there was a helicopter above us shooting, like a war sound. It was so bizarre. There's also apparently videos of the shooting in the background. There's some people that can be heard saying it's the helicopter. It's coming from the expletive helicopters. There's a breakdown posted. I mean, is it possible? Let's say they shot the Paddock guy and they carried out this attack, and then the helicopters were shooting at the Mandalay Bay, not the people in the crowd. So they were shooting at the hotel, at the terrorists. I mean, if the U.S. government are the good guys here, they're shooting at the terrorists in the Mandalay Bay as the terrorists are shooting on the crowd, and with all the ricocheting sounds. So the helicopters were using fully automatic weapons, and the terrorists were not, or using the whatever bump stocks, or maybe they were fully auto modified as well. Whatever the case may be, the crank triggers. It looks really bizarre. Would that explain everything? And for whatever reason, they didn't want to alarm the masses that there were terrorist groups shooting, and they didn't want it, for whatever reason, they didn't want it out, so they framed the patsy. Is that the most likely scenario here to explain the Las Vegas incident? There is a very good video. It's actually posted October 19th, 2017 on Adam Danichewski's channel, YouTube channel. It actually doesn't have that many views, 26,000 views, and it was posted October 19th, 2017, 18 days after. And you could actually see their helicopters without their lights on firing in the sky. So it looks like there's up to three helicopters that could be shooting here. This is his analysis here from 6 minutes 34 seconds to 6:35. Look up at the light beam of the Luxor. At the top, possible muzzle flashes, the orange hue, similar flashes simultaneously begin from a second chopper to the right of the Luxor midway up, and a third shoot copter lights off is seen firing in the sky to the right of the light beam. At 6:33, to the left of Mandalay Bay towards the top floor, you can see another chopper. So that is not less than 4 choppers in the area of Mandalay Bay while the shooting is going on. At 6:47, you can see a white helicopter strobe near the Delano side facing the Luxor near the top floor. 6:49, there's a helicopter light about midway height alongside the Mandalay Bay at 6:50. Over these few seconds, the Luxor helicopter went lights out. So that's probably not a tour helicopter turning their lights off, unless, I don't know, it is kind of bizarre, but if you believe you're being fired upon, would you turn your helicopter lights off? I don't know. Or is this some kind of a standout, some kind of a shootout between helicopters and the 32nd floor of the Mandalay, or possible multiple floors in multiple different hotels, and the helicopters are shooting at the hotels, not at the crowd? I don't know how deeply this particular theory is being discussed, but based on all this information, is that a possibility? At 6:54, there's multiple flashes between the Delano and Mandalay Bay. There are 2 choppers, one above the other. At 7:07, you can see multiple flashes emerging from the helicopter above the Mandalay Bay. It's too fast to be a helicopter strobe light. They were either flashing lights or muzzle flashes. The color signature to me looks a bit on the white side rather than the orange hues I would expect from muzzle flashes. Either way, it's extremely suspect. At 7:08, 45 degrees off the top left of Mandalay Bay, about 40 feet away, flashes that do not look like light strobes. These look like muzzle flashes. Note the subtle orange hue with distinct faintness. Are they going to argue it's the red blinking light on a helicopter skid? Probably, yet keep in mind that the strange behaviors and use common sense. Presumably, the same chopper continues through 7:19, flying up to the center top of the screen away from the Mandalay towards the Skyview Towers. Note that now that it is away from Mandalay Bay, it is back to normal lights on, the normal night operating lights of a helicopter. At 7:28, another helicopter low is seen operating with normal night lights. At 9:57, top left next to the Nashville is Next Pyramid Tent. Helicopter strobe light normal until 9:59, then it's lights out and a flash back on. Too short for a normal helicopter strobe operation. At 10, same location, it looks like a little puff of glowing smoke is present as the helicopter strobe turns back on again briefly. At 11:20, you see a chopper near Delano while gunfire is heard in the background. 11:24, you can see the white strobe from a helicopter between Delano and Luxor at about mid-height of the Delano. 13:02, gunfire is heard. 2 helicopters visible, one above the streetlight center top, the other over Las Vegas Boulevard. The video is at the corner of Reno and Las Vegas Boulevard. These helicopters are 2,000 feet away. That would cause a sound delay of 2 seconds from any muzzle flash. So, yeah, it is quite kind of bizarre here, though. It's unclear here I still believe it's unclear whether the helicopters were engaging with people in different buildings and there was gunfire from both sides, and that's what caused all of the confusion. And further analysis here from this Adam guy. From reviewing the footage, I have been seeing helicopters that go lights out. I think those are the ones who are doing the firing. The helicopters operating lights on are distractions, yet they could have fired too. Keep checking, excellent catch. Okay. If you look at the beginning of at the first loud volley of gunfire, there is a flash in the sky, impossible from shooting from within a hotel room. Look at under the lamp arch on the green palm branch to the upper right, you'll see a flash. Now here's another breakdown on this video by another user. Bullets fired from 250 to 400 yards away strike victims and or objects before one hears the sound of gunfire from such distances. Go back to minutes 311 through 319. Listen as the first bullets hit object structures or on paved venue. Or perhaps we should listen for the distinctive crack or snap sounds which come after the helo returns into view, minute 308, and settles between the Mandalay Bay Casino and Hotel and the Delano Hotel, circa 311. Shortly hereafter, we see concertgoers who are aware of shots fired and begin to flee past the cameraman, beginning minute 334. These concertgoers were arguably witnesses to one or more victims who had just been struck. Be advised, the 81-page LVMPD report released on January 20th, 2018 indicate Paddock fired off a few single-shot volleys before he turned to the fully automatic AR-15s, but nothing is mentioned whatsoever about all the wandering helicopters flying around and over the Mandalay Bay of 91 Harvest Avenue. My God, whoever were flying were also percipient witnesses, or perhaps a more nefarious issue. FBI helicopters who had transponders turned off and gave orders to the ATC tower and FAA not to interfere with an FBI matter or an FBI sting operation involving Paddock. So what's interesting there, yeah, if those were regular tourist helicopters, I mean, those are all witnesses that should have definitely been investigated. It's weird, though. The people pointing to the helicopters executing the shooting themselves, they used evidence from the people on the ground that were saying they felt like they were being attacked by helicopters or whatever. With all the loudness of the shots, if the people in the hotels, the multiple shooters in the hotels, if there were multiple shooters, if the helicopters were returning fire, would they be able to tell the fire coming from the hotel versus the hotels and who was aimed at who? I don't know. It's really, really bizarre. But the whole helicopter issue, I don't know. It does seem bizarre, especially if these helicopters are going lights off or lights out, which is really bizarre and highly dangerous. The other thing I just thought of, if this was some kind of arms setup sting op involving FBI or government officials and it went bad, if the people involved, if they got spooked, if Paddock was involved, or even if he wasn't, who knows at what point they decided to use him as a patsy, if they felt they were going to be killed and these were some kind of extremists, would they just randomly open fire on the crowd to try to take down as many people as they could before they were taken down themselves? And is that what happened here? And the helicopters were not firing on the crowd, they were firing into the hotel or hotels, depending how scattered this group could have been of multiple shooters. I don't know. It's all bizarre. If this is the way that it went down, would it be reported this way? That's the question. Because the coincidence theorists just immediately shut down any kind of theories that run contrary to the propaganda peddled by the mainstream. But if something like this went down, would they honestly report on it? I don't know. Because technically, if the FBI or a government agency is setting up the sting op, it goes wrong, that's their responsibility, right? So if all these innocent people were killed, why are they even setting up a sting op overlooking a concert? I don't know. It's just, it's bizarre. It's bizarre. So there's more oddities here, but that was the main issues were covered, typical MINDSHOCK fashion. Plenty more to cover. as new people are still researching this, but a lot of this information all came out even October 2017. These videos of helicopters and muzzle flashes and smoke from the helicopters, this is all October 2017. So, and is that why the media also kind of put it under the rug? Because if this was a sting op gone bad and there was fire from helicopters and all that, is it viewed as just simply too careless and too incompetent? It's just not good for public perception. It's just not good PR. And it's easier to just turn this into another lone gunman acting alone. A lot to think about here. A lot to think about. Hope you guys enjoyed another edition of MINDSHOCK. If you like the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. If you like the podcast, hit the like button. Share it across social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority on topic in case requests. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.